Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Ruth Crowell, CEO of LBMA, the preeminent standard-setting body for the global wholesale market for precious metals, to discuss the impact of SVB on the gold market. Ruth, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you got it. Before we get into SVB, what's been driving the gold price?
Well, certainly the major factors you would expect in terms of inflation, geopolitical uncertainty, which continues for over a year now, given the situation in Russia and Ukraine. But the biggest driver continues to be US dollar strength and questions about what is the Fed going to do. And it really is that strong US dollar and questions about the Fed that has meant that gold, while still very interesting for investors, you haven't seen it go over the $2,000 mark because a strong US dollar is keeping it down. You've seen that also reflected in the meeting that's happening over today and tomorrow at the Fed, looking to see what's going to be done about the banking sector. Not a lot of certainty in terms of what's going to happen on rates rises. So certainly forecasters are expecting it to be a bullish year, and I think the events of the last few weeks has made them more optimistic than they were a month ago.
And let's talk about that. What has the impact of Silicon Valley Bank been on the gold market?
Well, as you would expect to see, there's been a lot of interest in gold, both in terms of market volume as well as an uptick in the price. Gold continues to play that role as a safe haven asset. And certainly we saw that on the 10th of March when SVB collapsed, and we saw the price jump in the morning to the afternoon, and then continue to grow over the 4 days up until the 15th of March. So you've seen it go up to almost 5%. And that's really concerns about Credit Suisse and one of the larger, are we having a larger issue here in the banking sector? I think the rescue over the weekend has certainly settled some nerves, as well as, I think, as I mentioned before, the questions about what the Federal Reserve is going to do as a result has brought the price down a little bit yesterday and today. But overall volume, which you can see in the LBMA trade data, we're up almost 50% year on year. So certainly a lot of interest in gold with the geopolitical uncertainty, but now concerns about the banking sector.
What other major drivers are influencing the price of gold?
Well, I think central bank buying. This was a story that really started last year, where you saw net purchases of over 1,000 tons. And big purchases here from Turkey, from China, also from the ECB in the last month or so. So really there's a strong interest in gold globally, but I think it's very interesting to see the central bank purchases. And it's something that there was also the paper published by the IMF in January of this year, saying that gold as international reserves no longer a barbarous relic. That's a paper by Barry Eichengreen, amongst others. But it's really talking about these big purchases of central banks of gold reserve and what it means for the asset class more holistically. I think as LBMA, we continue to argue that commercial banks should also be able to hold gold as the high quality liquid asset that it is, to make their balance sheets stronger. And certainly with the data that publishing on Nasdaq and other venues, can have a strong review, and it makes a strong case, not just for investors, but also for regulators alike.
And finally, Ruth, what else is LBMA up to?
So beyond looking at the transparency piece and try to bring the information to the wider world and investors, we're also talking about green gold. So we spent the last year working with the vaults and the refiners to bring a green gold that is deliverable in local London, that investors could ask for. So right now we're really consulting with the buy side to see if what we have come up with resonates with their investors, and also being clear that whatever we're doing is going to be ethical. It's not just looking at the one issue on carbon or one issue on climate generally, but a holistic view on everything that's important and brings integrity to the industry. So that's part of a wider piece on our work on sustainability. So green gold in London, but also looking at the sustainability agenda and trying to encourage the industry to start towards a transition when it comes to net zero.
All right, Ruth, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you so much.